Hi, everyone, and thanks for making time for this one. Let me start with a message I have seen land in an HR inbox more times than I can count. A service manager writes in, "My technician says he should be paid from 7 in the morning. He didn't reach the customer until 8:30. He was at his kitchen table for most of that. Do I owe him 90 minutes or don't I?" If you have ever had to answer that email, you know the honest answer used to be, "Let me get back to you." It is because the rules were built for a workplace where people left home, drove to one building, and drove home again. That is not the workplace most of you manage anymore. On July 22, 2026, the Wage and Hour Division at the Department of Labor issued 2 opinion letters that speak directly to this. Over the next 30 minutes, I'll walk you through both, and more importantly, hand you a way to answer that manager's email yourself. Let's get into it. Before we touch a single fact pattern, I want to be precise about what these documents are. And I am not being pedantic. The words you use inside your own company change how much weight people give this. An opinion letter is the Wage and Hour Division answering a specific question from a specific party about a specific set of facts. There is real value in that. Section 10 of the Portal to Portal Act gives you a good faith reliance defense if you rely on a written interpretation from the department. And courts read these letters, they often find them persuasive. Now look at the right-hand side, because this is where organizations get sloppy. Not a statute, Congress passed nothing. Not a regulation, no rulemaking, no comment period. Not a court decision, and no judge is bound by it. So when the compliance memo goes around next week, please don't call it the new DOL travel time law. Both letters close with the same caution. Facts outside the request could produce a different answer. One scope note I'll come back to at the end. Everything today is federal. Some states go considerably further. So why did DOL bother? These 3 rows explain the whole problem. Top row is the commute every travel time policy in America was built around. Home, drive, one workplace, drive, home. 2 unpaid edges, a workday in the middle. Easy. Middle row is your hybrid analyst. She answers email at home at 7:30, drives in at 10 to miss traffic, works at the office, drives home at 3, finishes from her sofa. There is now work sitting on both sides of that drive. And that is exactly why a lot of employers simply refuse to let hourly staff do it at all. Salary people got flexibility. Hourly people got told no. Bottom row is your field workforce, and it is messier. Before that truck moves, there might be a dispatch page, a call to the customer, a diagnosis over the phone, and a call to a second technician to cover a job. 4 different activities. And here's the point of the whole session. They don't all have the same legal character. Both letters ask versions of one question. Does working before you travel turn the travel into paid time? Sometimes. What we are here to learn is what makes the difference. All right, foundation. 4 ideas, then we apply them. Idea 1, and it is the big one. A Supreme Court case from 1944, Armour against Wantock, gives us the test we still use. Is the time spent mainly for the employer's benefit or mainly for the employees? Looking at all the circumstances, not one convenient fact. DOL runs both 2026 letters on exactly that test. 2 supporting points. People are always surprised by this one. The FLSA never actually defines the word work. That is why we read cases and opinion letters instead of a definition. Second, and this is the one that bites employers, you owe for work you know about or have reason to know about, even if nobody assigned it, including work done at a kitchen table. I never told him to call that customer is not a defense if you knew he was doing it every morning. The right side is the standing federal picture, and neither letter disturbed it. Normal home-to-work travel isn't paid. Travel between job sites during the workday is paid. Any actual work performed while traveling is paid. Hold those last 2, they come straight back. 3 quick pieces of law. The Portal to Portal Act, 1947. Employers don't have to pay for travel to the place where the work happens, or for the small activities before and after. But here is the line everybody misses. It only applies before your first real work activity, or after your last one. Inside the workday, the Portal Act has nothing to say. Park that it does serious work in the second letter. The middle panel barely shows up in the law firm alerts, and it is central to letter 10. In 1996, Congress added the Employee Commuting Flexibility Act. If your people take a company vehicle home, that commute and the small stuff that goes with using the vehicle isn't treated as principal work. But it comes with conditions. A vehicle of a type normally used for commuting, travel within the normal commuting area, and an agreement about the vehicle. Those are not automatic. Third, what makes something real work? The phrase is integral and indispensable, something the employee cannot do without. Now, the box at the bottom, because this is the assumption I correct most often. Integrity staffing against busk. Warehouse workers had to pass an anti-theft screening after every shift. Mandatory, on company property, and the company benefited. The Supreme Court still said not paid because the employer could have canceled that screening tomorrow and every worker could still have done the job. So when a supervisor says, "I required it, therefore we pay it," that is a fact worth knowing. It is not the test. This slide is the hinge of the session, so stay with me. The continuous workday rule says once your first real work activity begins, the clock runs until your last one ends, even through stretches where you are not producing anything. The case to remember is Alvarez, and I'll spare you the meat processing facts. Employees had to put on specialized protective equipment, and the court held that once that principal activity begins, the walking and travel that follow inside the workday can be paid. In your language, the schedule doesn't decide when the paid day starts. What the person actually did decides it. And that is exactly what makes HR nervous. If the workday runs continuously, and my hybrid employee cleared 3 emails at 7, is her 9:15 drive now inside a paid workday? Look right. There have always been exceptions. A bona fide meal break sits inside the workday and isn't paid. Off-duty time? Same. Letter 9 adds a third, the ordinary commute. And the reasoning is structural, which is what makes it useful. Commuting was never paid time, not even before the Portal Act existed in 1947, so its exclusion never depended on that statute, which means a commute doesn't become paid just because it lands between your first and last work activity. So the answer to the worry is not automatically. Let's see what DOL actually said. Letter 9. Notice who is asking a representative acting for an employer, and it is an ordinary corporate office. Administrative support, bookkeeping clerks. Here's their problem, and I bet some of you have lived it. They already allow telework, but they won't let a non-exempt person work in 2 locations in one day because somebody read the regulation about job site to job site travel and got worried. So salaried staff get flexibility and hourly staff don't. That is the real cost of legal uncertainty. The question is narrow. If she works at home, drives in midday, and works at the office, and that midday drive is offered as an option instead of a commute she would have made anyway, does the drive have to be paid? Pay attention to the stipulated facts at the bottom, because they are doing work. She is fully relieved of duty while driving. The trip is 20 minutes or more, and the employer's timekeeping genuinely captures work wherever it is performed. DOL's answer: ordinary commuter travel, not hours worked. But read the amber note, because this is where organizations get careless. Every minute she works at home is paid. All of it. Only the drive stays unpaid. 3 scenarios. They all land in the same place, but for different reasons. And the differences are the useful part. Scenario 1 is the rush hour case, the one your hybrid people will actually walk in and ask for. 9 to 5, an hour each way. She wants to work at home from 8 to 10, drive in after the traffic clears, drive home mid-afternoon, finish from home. Same 7.5 hours, an hour less in the car. Ordinary commute, not paid. And DOL adds something helpful. Saving that hour isn't what makes it work. Real choice is enough. She could be waiting on a plumber or have a child home sick. Any legitimate personal reason will do. Scenario 2 is the one to underline. She volunteers for extra hours on a short-staffed project, but only if she can do them at home early. Ordinary commute, unpaid. Then DOL says something more useful than the holding itself. This does not depend on the extra work being voluntary. If the employer had required those hours and she chose to do them at home rather than drive in early, the commute would still be normal. Scenario 3. He takes the city bus, can't finish before the last one leaves, and asks to catch it and finish at home on overtime. Ordinary commute as long as he isn't working on the bus. And that caveat is the whole ball game in the second letter. Bottom line, the at-home work is paid in all three. The drive isn't. Don't let a manager mash those together. If you screenshot one slide today, make it this one. The gap between using this letter well and misusing it lives here. Left column, 4 things you can rely on. Ordinary commuting isn't work time whenever it falls in the day. Working at home before or after a commute doesn't by itself convert it. Your employee's house doesn't become a job site just because work happened there. And there is no minimum length a 5-minute commute is excluded exactly like a 50-minute one. Right column, 4 things it did not do. It didn't touch travel between job sites. It didn't touch work you actually perform while traveling. And it did not say every commute is ordinary in DOL's own words, where the travel and its timing are dictated by the employer and impose significant constraints before, during, or after the trip. That travel can flip to being mainly for the employer's benefit. The bottom box is for payroll. None of this removes your record-keeping obligation. You still have to show hours worked each workday and work week, wherever they happened. DOL even notes you may need to capture the timing or length of that excluded midday drive, not to pay it, but to show what was work and what wasn't. 2 court cases used for one purpose, to hand you the variable that separates these 2 letters. Ruti, 9th Circuit, 2010. Technicians installing vehicle alarm systems, driving company vehicles between customers. 3 things worth your time. The commute in the company vehicle wasn't paid, so no, a company truck doesn't automatically buy you paid travel. The morning routine of receiving jobs, mapping them, and prioritizing routes was treated as part of the commute, not the real work. And the useful one, the required end-of-day data transmission didn't make his drive home paid, because he had roughly a 12-hour window to send it. 2 research controls in the red box. It is a 9th Circuit case, persuasive elsewhere, binding only there. And an earlier 2009 version was withdrawn when the court granted rehearing. It cannot be cited. If your search turns up 578 F3D 1084, that is the wrong opinion. The one you want is 596 F3D 1046. Kubel from the 2nd Circuit is the short version. Required paperwork at home to be done sometime in the morning and evening didn't make the commute compensable. Now, the Navy panel, this is the point. The variable isn't whether work happened before the drive. It is the window. 12-hour window, and the commute stays ordinary. Work required immediately before, during, or after the drive, and you are somewhere completely different. Letter 10. First difference. The person asking is the employee, a field service engineer who installs and services MRI machines. Read these facts carefully, because everyone does work in the analysis. He has no office. Home, first customer, site to site, home. Paid shift 8 to 5. But between 7 and 8, the employer pushes customer service requests to him through the company paging system, 3 to 5 on a normal morning. Accepting one takes about 15 seconds. Then he calls each customer, 5 to 10 minutes a call, usually within 15 minutes of the page, to book the appointment. Sometimes he calls another engineer to cover a job he can't take. He drives a company SUV at no cost to himself, and his employer pays him nothing for that 7 to 8 hour. The Navy panel on the right is the habit I most want to change. Most of us look at that morning and see one blurry lump labeled stuff before work. DOL doesn't. DOL breaks it into 4 separate activities, and they don't all get the same answer. 4 activities, 4 separate analyses. This is the heart of the program. Number 1, receiving the pages. Not hours worked, and the reasoning matters more than the result. Having an assignment sent to you is part and parcel of taking the company vehicle home, so the Commuting Flexibility Act covers it. Number 2, calling customers to book and arrange the appointments. That is paid work, required by the employer, benefits the employer, and here is the legal hook. Integral and indispensable to what he is employed to do. Somebody has to phone the hospital, or that MRI never gets serviced. Number 3, calling other engineers to cover jobs. Same answer, same reasoning. Number 4 is the drive, and that depends entirely on sequence. Next slide. Now the red box, and don't skip it. DOL excluded the pages under the Commuting Flexibility Act, not because 15 seconds is trivial. 2 completely different theories. And that act has conditions. Company vehicle of a normal commuting type, normal commuting area, agreement in place. If your technician drives her own car, that reasoning isn't automatically available to you. So don't take receiving assignments is free and staple it onto every dispatch app you own. Same man, same job, 2 different mornings, and the order changes the answer. Scenario 1. Pages start at 7. He spends about 50 minutes of that hour on customer calls at his kitchen table. Leaves at 8. DOL says the drive is paid in 2 steps. Step 1. He has already done real work, the calls, so the drive is inside the workday, and the Portal Act and the vehicle rules don't reach inside the workday. Step 2 is the step people skip. That alone doesn't finish it, because an ordinary commute is excluded, even inside the workday. So DOL asks, is this drive ordinary? No. The employer decides when he leaves and how. Substantial work is required immediately before it and immediately after it. And he has almost none of the freedom that makes a commute a commute. No choice of departure time, no choice of transport, no personal stop on the way. Scenario 2 flips the order. First appointment is 8:30, 2.5 hours away, so he leaves at 6 and makes the calls from the truck. Now you get a split. 6 to 7 before he does any work is an ordinary unpaid commute. His workday begins at the first customer call, and everything from that call to the customer's door is paid. Now the amber box, because honest teaching matters more here than a clean rule. DOL built that answer on an assumption that he must regularly plan on spending most of that hour on calls. If his mornings routinely look different, the drive may be an ordinary commute after all. And DOL refused to say how little calling would be too little. There is no bright line in this letter, so don't invent one for your supervisors. Let's pull it together. Nothing here contradicts anything else. One test, 2 very different sets of facts. If you remember one row, make it who controls timing and manner. In letter 9, the employee does. The midday trip is offered to her as an option. In letter 10, the employer does. That single difference does more work than everything else on the table combined. Second most important is the freedom row. In letter 9, the employer stipulated she is fully relieved of duty while driving. In letter 10, scenario 2, he is on customer calls the entire way. Look at the vehicle row too. Letter 9 doesn't involve a company car at all. Letter 10 does. And ownership doesn't decide the question in either direction. And the bottom row is the one to carry into your policy work. Both are fact-specific guidance, not rules. 5 sentences I hear constantly, and what each should be replaced with. 1. Working before the commute makes the whole commute paid. That is the fear that produced letter 9. No, not automatically. Pay the work. The ordinary commute stays unpaid. 2. Home to first customer is never paid. Also wrong, and letter 10 is your proof. 3. And field operations gets this wrong in both directions. The company vehicle. Owning the truck doesn't make an ordinary commute paid. It also doesn't make paid travel unpaid. The vehicle is a fact. It isn't an answer. 4 is the bus correction. If the employer requires it, we have to pay it. Legally incomplete every time. 5. And I want to be careful because this one is easy to teach badly. Don't walk out and tell payroll that small increments don't count. DOL excluded those pages under the vehicle rules not because 15 seconds is nothing. Rest breaks of 5 to 20 minutes are always paid. The federal de minimis idea is narrow. Courts disagree about it, and some states won't apply it at all. If somebody is leaning on a de minimis theory, that is a conversation with employment counsel, not a policy you write yourself on a Tuesday afternoon. Let's leave the letters and talk about where the money actually leaks. In my experience, it is almost never a sophisticated legal error. It is 8 very ordinary habits. 1 and 7 are the same problem from 2 angles. A supervisor texts a technician at 6:40. Call the Riverside account before you head out. Nobody in that exchange thinks of it as a payroll event. Multiply it by 12 supervisors who each handle it differently, and you have a wage exposure and a collective action pattern at once. 2 is the your day starts when you reach the customer rule. It sounds clean and administrable, which is precisely why it survives audits. Test it against what your people actually do before they arrive. 5 grows every year. Dispatch technology creates work, and your software vendor isn't going to tell you which taps and screens are compensable. 6 is where I'd open an audit tomorrow. Payroll sees an 8 a.m. arrival. Payroll doesn't see the 7:30 troubleshooting call. If your system physically can't capture that call, your policy doesn't matter. And 8 is why this isn't a rounding error. 15 minutes a day is more than an hour a week, and that hour can land right on top of 40. Now, let's apply it. 6 quick scenarios. My goal isn't to hand you paid or unpaid. It is to train the questions you ask first. Scenario 1 is your baseline, essentially letter 9. Pay the home hours, don't pay the drive. The action item is unglamorous but essential. Make sure timekeeping actually captures that 7 to 9 block, and put the arrangement in writing as optional. Her choosing it is doing genuine work in the analysis. Scenario 2 is where it gets interesting, and I am deliberately not giving you a clean answer. A required 30-minute Teams meeting from home at 8, then travel to the office immediately after. The meeting is paid easy. The commute is harder. Letter 9 says required at-home work by itself doesn't convert a commute. But immediately is exactly the fact that mattered in letter 10. And the more the manager also controls when she leaves, the closer you get. That is a needs further analysis case. And if it happens every Monday across a department, it is a council conversation, not an HR guess. Scenario 3, the dispatch app. If all it does is show tomorrow's first address, that looks incidental. But remember why that reasoning ran through the vehicle rules, and they have conditions. If he is in his own car, you can't borrow it. Practical move? Sit with the app and go screen by screen through what it actually requires him to do. Very often it is more than looking. Scenario 4 is the one you will meet most often, and the closest thing to letter 10 inside your own operation. 15 to 20 minutes on the phone with the customer diagnosing the fault, arranging badge access, working out which parts to load. That isn't receiving an assignment. That is the job. Pay it. Whether the drive is also paid comes down to the same two variables. Does the employer control when he leaves? And does he have to leave right away? Scenario 5 is relief, because one part of this really is settled. Customer A to customer B during the workday is paid time. Full stop. Two things I'd still check. The mirror image the drive home from the last job is ordinary commuting, and whether your travel coding flows into the overtime calculation. Scenario 6 is the argument starter. He is already driving in. The manager rings with a genuine 15-minute customer problem. 3 questions never merged. The call itself is work performed while traveling, paid, and clear. Whether the rest of the drive changes character is genuinely unsettled. Courts have gone both ways depending on how extensive the work was, and DOL declined to draw the line, so don't draw one on their behalf. And third, not a wage question at all. Somebody should be asking whether you want a 15-minute technical conversation happening at 70 miles an hour. Here is your takeaway tool. 8 questions in this order every time. Question 1 sounds trivial, and it is the one everybody skips. Name the activity precisely. Not he did some stuff before work, received a page, read an email, called a customer, diagnosed a fault, loaded a part. 5 different questions, potentially 5 different answers. 2. Is it real work, integral, and indispensable, or is it part of the commute? 3 and 4 decide most close calls. What actually happened before the travel, and who controlled the timing and sequence? Employee flexibility points one way. Employer or customer requirement points the other. 5. Was the person genuinely relieved of duty during the drive, or taking calls the whole way? 6 is where most people start, and starting there is why they get it wrong. You can't classify the travel until you know what came before it. 7 is your payroll reality check. Even where the travel is unpaid, did you capture the work? And what is capturing it due to weekly overtime? And 8 is the guardrail. Everything above that line is federal. In a state with a broader control test, question 8 isn't optional. Guidance that stops inside the HR team changes nothing. So let's be specific. HR. Pull the hybrid policy and the fieldwork policy and read them as though you had a split-day workforce, because you do. Then train supervisors, because that is where the exposure gets manufactured. Payroll. The first question is whether your system can capture a 12-minute block of work from somebody's house at 7 in the morning. If it can't, the policy is decoration. Then model the overtime impact, because when you start capturing this correctly, some people cross 40 who didn't before. You want to know that in advance, not in a demand letter. Managers. 3 habits. Don't create work outside scheduled hours without thinking about how it gets recorded. Never say anything that sounds like off the clock in any wording. And know when to call HR instead of deciding alone. Operations. Go look at the dispatch workflow with fresh eyes. What does the technology actually require before somebody leaves the house? And who really controls departure time? 2 tools, both short enough that they might actually get used. On the left, the manager check 8 questions before contacting an hourly employee outside scheduled hours. Look at questions 2 through 5. They are the 4 activities from letter 10, rewritten as something a supervisor can recognize in the moment. Am I sending information or assigning work? Asking for a customer contact? For troubleshooting? For coordination with somebody else? A supervisor who answers those honestly avoids most of what we talked about. On the right is your audit in 4 passes. Who, what, systems, policies. Start with the people, because you probably have populations nobody thinks of as field staff, mobile care workers, maintenance crews, anybody dispatched from home. Then the practices, which is where you find the 730 call. Then whether your systems can capture what you found, and only then rewrite the policy, because rewriting first gives you a beautifully accurate document that describes nobody's actual job. 5 things, then the sources. 1. Ordinary commuting is still generally unpaid under federal law, and Letter 9 strengthens that by naming the ordinary commute as a category that survives even inside the continuous workday. 2. Working at home before a commute doesn't automatically make the commute paid. Pay the work. That is a separate question from paying the drive, and mashing them together is the most common mistake, in both directions. 3. Substantive work before travel, particularly in an employer-directed field workflow, genuinely can change the answer. Letter 10 is your example. 4. If you write down one sentence today, write this. Look at the activity, the sequence, who controlled the timing and manner, the type of travel, and the timekeeping, not simply where the employee's body happened to be. 5. And none of it matters if your systems can't capture 12 minutes of work from somebody's kitchen table. That line at the bottom isn't boilerplate. Everything today was federal. Several states apply a broader control test to travel, and that review is a separate exercise with a separate answer.